Okay, hello and welcome to our weekly Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that we do pretty much every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you are new here, welcome, and if you are returning here, welcome. So we have Elle and Sebastian, Mohammed, Ellie May, or Ella May, I should say. Welcome, welcome. My three loves. How's everybody's week going? Benjamin, Jamie, Tanitria. Change in my life says hello. Oh my goodness. Sebastian says it's 2:34 here in the morning. He's in Spain. Wow, you are a trooper. That means a lot to me, and I think to other people that you're up in the middle of the night on these live streams. So I hope we can give you some support that you're needing. Okay, Katie, interesting question here. She says, "Hi, Dana, week 6 on being here. Each week I try to have a question ready." So I like that. That's a good strategy. Uh, so how do I get to other good levels of attention from a new partner that I don't feel is enough attention because I am so used to being overly groomed by my ex who was a narcissist? So, okay. This is a challenge that I think a lot of people have, and Xiao Yu was saying, yeah, same thing. Um, that's a big question. I think there's a couple different parts of it at play here. One is if if we can work on cultivating hobbies and friends and activities and doing things on our own, so we're not so overly reliant on all of that attention and that affection, that love bombing that we were used to from somebody who was just laying it on so thick. That can really help. And it can also really help because once we get used to really kind of filling that own bucket on our end, we it kind of resets our level of what we need as well as what we consider normal. So then when somebody does start laying it on really thick, it feels uncomfortable. It feels like it's too much. So I think that's a big part of it. A lot of the reason that that love bombing was so intoxicating and really hooked us uh, has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of us have been walking around feeling unloved or unimportant for a very long time, and maybe have never even thought about that or realized that until now. So it's very common for people, for example, if a person grows up in a home where they're feeling uh, unloved or unimportant for whatever reason, for a wide variety of reasons. It doesn't even have to be an abusive home. It can be, parents were just really busy. You had a sibling that was special needs or high needs for whatever reason. Um, you know, you had the parents had a lot of children. Parents just weren't emotionally available. Maybe they were struggling with their own addiction or untreated mental health issues, or you name it. um, for people like that grow up in homes like this, they oftentimes tend to take on the caregiver role, where we almost can become wantless and needless, as Pia Melody would say, and we become so focused on meeting the wants and needs of other people. And so when we're in a situation, which might sound strange, because when we're in a situation with a love bomber, it's the opposite, right? All of our wants and needs are being met by this other person, but odds are it's probably for the first time in a long time, if not ever, that that's been the case. And so then it just becomes this feeling of, oh, this is so amazing to feel loved and appreciated and seen, and um, it feels healthy, but it's not healthy because it's too much the other direction. So finding that healthy level of middle ground, it takes a little bit of practice. And this is one of the reasons I encourage people to practice these skills with meeting new people and friendships. So, especially meeting and making new friends. That's a really great way to tell, because there isn't all of this baggage there that there can be with older friendships. So, meetup.com, Angie the other day was mentioning there's some, possibly local groups on Facebook. This can be a good way to get out there, meet new people, cultivate hobbies, these kinds of things. But then you'll just see things with a fresh set of eyes as you're interacting with new people in a new and different way. So, and sometimes too, with attention, another part of this is it's very common for people who are out of an abusive relationship, because it does take a little bit of time to get your sea legs with what's healthy and reasonable and normal, quote unquote normal. So what they might do is, if a person starts dating again, is they might find themselves dating somebody where there just isn't, where they're not getting their needs met, where that person's not as attentive or, affectionate as they need. But they might be thinking to themselves, oh no, this new partner I'm dating is wonderful. I'm the one with the problem because I'm so used to my ex laying it on so thick. But the reality might be, it might be both. It might be that there's some intimacy challenges in this new relationship that you're in. So examining, I would encourage you to not use your ex or that previous relationship as your measuring stick, but instead ask yourself, okay, what types of intimacy do I need in a healthy relationship? Like, what is a healthy relationship for me? And there's different aspects of intimacy. You have physical intimacy, and that goes far beyond. Actually, for the sake of describing this, I'm not even going to include sexual intimacy in that. Physical intimacy is non-sexual touching, holding hands, cuddling up next to the person, giving hugs, giving kisses. Physical intimacy, this the kind of intimacy between somebody that you care about. So obviously it would be a little bit different between your significant other than it would be with your child or your parent, but it's that same level of kind of non-sexual touching. But you're getting close to this other person. They want you to be close. You want to be close to them. That physical level of touch is there. Emotional intimacy. So that emotional intimacy is present where you're able to talk about things. You're able to have differences of opinion and able to address these things directly and have relatively, you don't need to have like super lengthy conversations where you definitely don't want to have manipulation involved, but where each person's able to effectively express their wants and needs and talk about things that maybe areas in the past that are sensitive. Of course, all of this is based on trust. Like, levels of intimacy correspond to levels of trust that you have with this person. So, for example, it would be inappropriate to have a high degree of emotional intimacy with somebody that you've only gone out with 3 times or that you've never met. Or, do you see what I'm saying? So it's balancing this. The level of trust corresponds to the level of intimacy that you have with that person. So emotional intimacy, sharing deep parts of yourself, your hopes, your dreams, your fears, these kinds of things. And the whole time, as this level of trust and these levels of intimacy are growing, you're taking the temperature of, okay, is this an emotionally safe person? How are they responding? How is this relationship growing? Does there need to be any adjustments made? And those adjustments made, it's going to depend on what is going on, but it can either be handled through assertive communication. It can be handled through potentially just physical distance, where if they do something that really crosses a boundary, you're like, you know what? No way. I'm done. Or maybe you take some time apart so you can clear your head, whatever that might look like for you. So, sexual intimacy, the types of sexual intimacy having this conversation about, okay, this is how often I like to be sexual. This is how I like to be sexual. This is not how I like to be sexual. This is what I need from you before we are sexual. So needing that emotional intimacy or that physical intimacy before, instead of just waiting until, somebody's in the mood. It's, it's the hand holding, it's the kissing, it's the cuddling, it's all of the stuff that leads up to that. There's financial intimacy, where you're open about finances, hopes, dreams, fears, reality about finances with this other person, and vice versa, right? Spiritual intimacy, talking about your spiritual wants and needs and hopes and fears and dreams and how this plays a part into your life, or it doesn't play a part into your life with the other person. So being open with them. So I think that's probably a better way to gauge what's going on in your relationship and where some tweaks might need to be made. So getting clear again on what you need out of a relationship in order for it to be fulfilling. And then thinking about, okay, is my partner, do I have that level of emotional honesty or intimacy with this person that I can talk about my wants and needs, and that they're going to receive them in a respectful, open way where we can work towards a solution here. So, okay, let's see here. Elizabeth says, what if sometimes I don't feel like socializing? How do I communicate that without hurting people? I struggle with the exact same thing, so I don't know if I'm the best person to ask about this, because at least for me, when I don't feel like socializing, it comes out of the blue, and it's to the point where I really can't even make myself respond to anybody. It's bad. If you know ahead of time, and thankfully at this point, at least in my life, my friends know, my family knows that sometimes I get thrown for a loop for, I don't even know what it's about, but I just kind of go dark for a day or a few days, but then I'll be in touch. So I've had to let them know, but it took me a long time to realize that this is a pattern for me, and my best intentions and willpower and everything doesn't break it. Like I just withdraw when I withdraw, and I reconnect when I reconnect. And I wish I wasn't that way. It's something I've been working on for a long time, but it just is something that happens to me. I just kind of get into a funk. So I would just encourage you being honest with the people in your life that you're doing this with, and saying, you know what, just like you said, Elizabeth, there's times where I just don't feel like socializing. It has nothing to do with you guys. It's 100% with me. There's times where I just need my alone time. And, I love you guys so much. And I apologize if that comes across as rude or insensitive. I for sure don't mean it to be that way. And I really value you in my life. And just letting them know that it's you, it's not them. Okay, let's see here. Yes. Okay, Katie, I'm glad that you picked up on that. She said, oh, this is very true. I should not use my ex as a measuring example for something new. Yes. And I see a lot of people do this unintentionally, and in different ways that I even just described. So another common way for people to do, again, myself included, is, and it's not even their ex, it's other, actually, let me back that up a little bit more. It's about using previous experiences with problematic people as the measuring stick. So people might say, well, you know what, this new relationship that I'm in, yeah, this person yells and screams and cusses, but at least they don't hit like my mom used to, or at least they don't belittle me like, my ex used to, or whatever the situation might be. So comparing, this is why it's so important that we don't that we don't use dysfunction as our measuring stick, that we use, okay, what is functional and healthy for me? Is this current situation, how is this current situation measuring up to what I know is healthy for me? Because we can really get ourselves tangled up if we're comparing a current like something's off, something's a little bit problematic for us with something that's been much worse. Because just because this current person, I don't know, does certain things that you don't like, there's not enough attention or affection or, you know, let's just say it's that. And let's say your ex used to, scream and yell and lie and cheat and hit and do all these things. Just because your current person in your life isn't doing those things doesn't mean that this is the right relationship for you. So it's important for us to see a problem when there's a problem and to get clear on our new kind of standards for what's healthy. Okay, let's see here. Elizabeth says, my ex never yelled at me. He was only angry with other people and situations. Does that still make him toxic? He just complains about everything. Everybody's level of what is toxic is going to be individual. For me, that's toxic. So continual negativity. I've talked about this before. Some of my main deal breakers that I think are at least can get another person started on reflecting on their own deal breakers are, for me, it's no active addictions. So that are destructive. Well, really, I think you could say any addiction is destructive. So no active addictions, no abuse of any kind, no adultery or cheating, and no real rotten attitude or just difficult attitude. I don't want to do crazy making in my life. I don't want to do chronic negativity in my life. I can't be with somebody who continually complains about their job or their lot in life. Like there's got to be, I can't do it. It's just, it's physically and emotionally exhausting for me. So yeah, I think that's those are all reasonable requests. There's lots of people out there that do not have active addictions, who are not abusive, who don't cheat, who and have a pretty good attitude the vast majority of the time. It's worth sitting down and really thinking about what makes for a nourishing, think about it in terms of nourishing. What makes for a nourishing relationship or environment or both for you? Because like I said, everybody's going to be different. For you, it might be, let's say if you play the guitar, it might be somebody that maybe music is a huge part of your life. For example, my former in-laws, okay? I have never met two people in my whole life who loved baseball more than these two did. And thank goodness that they got married, because that was their life, was baseball. There's no way they would have ever been able to be married to anybody else. Like, unless that other person liked baseball even more, which I don't even think is physically possible. They were huge baseball fans. That was a thing for them. They needed to be with somebody who enjoyed pretty much watching every single, big league, minor league, the little league, everything baseball. Everything was baseball all of the time. That was such a core thing for them. And they needed that. Whereas I am not really big into sports. So not an important thing, not nourishing, but it would be potentially draining for me if I was partnered with somebody who was all sports all of the time. I couldn't do that. It's just too much. So it's just knowing yourself. If you're really into playing guitar and going to live music and practicing guitar and your life is music, then it might be really important for you to find somebody that's supportive of that. Or actually not only who's interested in that, but is supportive of that. Like if you're going to kind of walk the road less traveled through life, right? And you're going to be a musician or, some sort of pursue some other path that most people don't go down, it's going to be important to find somebody that understands that about you and is able to support that emotionally. So just some things to think about. Okay, let me scroll up here. Dandelion Green says, I'm a hardcore introvert. Not socializing is natural, perhaps too natural for me. I hear ya. I am the exact same way. The exact same way. I used to have fantasies. This is going to sound terrible. I used to have fantasies about going to jail when I was younger. Like, this would be my ideal life. If I could just read all of the books and request any book in a prison library and they could send me the book and I could just be left alone to read and write all day long and somebody else prepared my meals and I didn't really have to go outside. I didn't have to socialize. I didn't have to work or do anything. That's where do I sign? that was my fantasy. So that's, yeah. So I get it. Yeah. I had not much of a big socializer myself either. Let's see here. Sebastian says, I travel and lost all my friends. They have kids or they're married now. Have you looked on meetup.com? There might, I would imagine that there's probably quite a few different groups in Spain that are based on travel and these kinds of things. He says, I just want to live a normal life with a normal loving spouse that doesn't abandon me without any reason. Xiao Yu says, I heard belittling a narcissist and confronting them about their weakness will shut them down. Is this true? I don't know if we can ever say anything is 100% true 100% of the time. When you're dealing with a person with erratic behavior who gets triggered and who has no boundaries, because you've got to remember, narcissists, their boundaries are ever shifting and they feel completely entitled and justified at the time to act in whatever way that they want to act. So I would not recommend doing anything that's coming across as confronting or aggressive to a person like that. It's your best just to steer clear, because I think more often than not, when you're dealing with a person who has that fight reflex or that fight defense engaged, where they have just kind of this, you've got to, when a person has their fight defense engaged, and we all have a fight defense, they're not emotionally connected to other people, because we can't be. That's not how we're wired. We're either in the rest and digest, empathy, compassion, bonding mode, or if we go into fight or flight, we're into the escaping, I got to get out of here, or I've got to fight off whatever is attacking me. But we don't connect to other people when we're in that fight mode, especially, or flight. This is how when people are in a scramble, let's say when they're drowning, for example, and they're just in an absolute mad scramble, it's very common for them to inadvertently drown the person trying to rescue them because they're in a panic. So when a person's engaged in these types of defenses, fight, flight, freeze, they're not connecting with other people. And some people, for a wide variety of reasons, get locked into these defenses, and that over time becomes basically their personality. So that's kind of how, in a nutshell, like personality, what we consider personality disorders stem from. So if you have a person that's in that fight defense, there is no deep connection to other people. It's all about them all of the time. They're in survival mode. They probably don't even realize it, frankly. So when a person's already all charged up and feeling aggressive and in this mode, challenging them, confronting them, belittling them, that kind of stuff I highly don't recommend, because there's a very solid chance that you're just going to be spitting fuel on the fire, and things are going to escalate very quickly to the point of way past what you can even anticipate. Okay, let's see here. Oh, I'm scrolling up here. Let's see. Purple Belt says, I have a question. I've been going through the house. Should I keep journals and cards given to me during separation, divorce, and hoovering? I've been having bad dreams about it all. He mentioned his changed anger every time. Oh, that's such a personal decision. It's such a personal decision. I think it's okay for you to get rid of them. If it's just if you just have a stack of manipulation that is journals and cards lying around the house, then it's none of it's real. It's all just signs that this is a very just person who's in denial, or you know who's got some major issues. Like this, none of this was real. So they might have thought it was real at the time, or they might have hoped it was real at the time, but their actions didn't back that up. And realistically, they probably didn't hope or even think that. They just were saying what they needed to say in order to get what they wanted to get, right? But at a minimum, one of the things that I have found helpful when I'm not ready to fully get rid of something yet, but I'm at that in between stage, is I'll put it in a box just called in general, when I sort stuff, I'll put, there's a box or a bin or a pile or whatever for trash. And then there's a box or a bin or a pile to donate. And then there's a maybe pile. And that maybe pile is just things that I am on the fence about, but I might not be quite ready to get rid of them yet. And all of that maybe stuff goes into a box, and we usually go into the garage or in a closet. And then maybe 6 months, a year, however long down the road, I'll pull it out again and see how I feel about it. And just from my personal experience, I have found that when I'm ready to let go of something, I know I'm ready to let go of something. And it doesn't become this huge tug of war in my mind over what I should do. So I guess my advice to you would to turn inward and, to ask yourself, like, well, what do you think would be the best for you at this point in your life? Uh, Tenitria asks, Dana, I'm wondering if I have PTSD. I am very jumpy when somebody walks behind me and they are just walking normally. Is this just high anxiety? So it can definitely be a sign of an overactive um, kind of fight or flight response, which tends to go hand in hand with PTSD. In order for somebody to qualify for a diagnosis of PTSD, there's a whole checklist of symptoms that they have to, I forget how many, it's like 5 out of 9 or something like that, that a person has to meet in order to qualify for that diagnosis. But that level of just kind of overly, how would you say, overly excited, overly excitable is very common. And here's the thing too with PTSD, well, with anything, is after trauma, it's very common, very, very, very common for a person to have uh, a lot of the symptoms of PTSD. For some people, for quite a few people, they tend to resolve in time, and for other people, they don't. And so it just kind of depends. But if this is a new thing for you that you never really were jumpy before, it could very much be related to this. So it's, if you have a therapist in your area who is skilled with EMDR, that might be worth a visit, because a lot of people really just, I haven't ever personally gone through it, but I've heard from quite a few people that within a relatively short amount of sessions that they're able to really process their trauma. And the book that we're going to be reading for book club this month, it's called, I don't have it handy, it's over by my bed, I think, Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine. And he talks about anxiety and moving through anxiety. And so I would encourage you to be there for that book club discussion. It's interesting. So his whole, just in a nutshell, his whole approach is opposite to, because there tends to be two main theories of how to handle anxiety. One has to do with basically getting yourself calm, getting grounded, getting in the moment, becoming settled, bringing your anxiety down. The other approach, which is what's covered in this book, is about allowing yourself, it's mindfulness, but it's more than that. It's allowing yourself to experience the emotion. And I forget if it's in this book or his other book, where he talks about doing these different exercises. So when those emotions of anxiety start rising, to go with them. And we don't have to deal with our exact fear face on, but to allow yourself to experience that rise in anxiety, that rise in your blood pressure, your pulse, and then to feel how it feels when you're starting to calm down and everything starts getting back to normal. Your breath catches an even pace. You just start to get back into that relax mode. And he has different exercises that are completely unrelated to what most people would be experiencing anxiety over. So for example, there was one about, you're in the middle of, I don't know, the desert, and you see a snake, or you see a beautiful, this was one of my favorite ones, because the animal ones really kind of freaked me out. But you see a beautiful mountain off in the distance, and you're running towards it because you want to just get a better picture of it. And then next thing you know, you just happen to look down and you realize, oh my goodness, there's this huge ravine, like this Grand Canyon-esque ravine between me and this mountain that I didn't notice. And had I gone 3 more steps, I would have just tumbled right over the edge. And so feeling that feeling of pulling back and catching your breath, and that instant panic and surprise of, oh my goodness, I didn't realize this was here. And then visualizing backing yourself up 10, 15 steps, and maybe even sitting down and just allowing yourself to catch your breath and to settle down a little bit. And then once you realize, oh my goodness, thank goodness I saw that just in time. And then you're starting to focus again on the beautiful view, and you're able to get back to a baseline level of normal. His whole theory, and it makes perfect sense, is we tend to have anxiety when this energy, when these emotions get stuck in us, and that they're not allowed to complete. But his whole theory is we don't need to re-experience, we don't need to re-traumatize ourselves. So like if our anxiety has to do with, we were in a car accident, we don't need to go get in a car to re-experience this anxiety. We just need to find a way to make ourselves anxious in a safe way, and to allow that whole ride of anxiety to experience that whole ebb and flow of it until we get back to our baseline level of normal. And he was saying doing that a few times can really help move that energy through a person. So it's interesting. I look forward to that conversation with you guys more in depth in a few weeks. Tanitria says, I find myself very jumpy when walking on the street, even at work. Is that PTSD? Well, it's definitely a sign of just kind of overstimulation, which can go hand in hand with PTSD. Like I was saying before, for some people, these symptoms can calm down, and they do tend to calm down somewhat over time, I am still very much that way. I am a ridiculously jumpy person. It's comical. Uh, it's even comical to me at this point, but it's people are continually shocked as to how like to how jumpy I am. And I've joked for years that I think everybody around me needs to wear one of those little cat collars that has a bell on it so I can know where everybody is at any given time, because I could even know, Tanitria, we could be in the same house. I could know you are in the kitchen, and I could leave the room for a second and then come back, and I would jump 3 feet high in the air because I would like just forget, and then you're there, and it terrifies me. So it's, I guess what I'm saying is it just kind of depends on what other symptoms you have and what is livable for you and what are things that you would want to work on, and to go from there. Gareth asks, has anyone heard of Richard Bandler? Yes, I have. Who was the other guy? It was Bandler, and it started with the G. Oh, I forget his name. The two of the guys that came up with NLP, which is a whole nother interesting conversation where which NLP stands for neuro-linguistic programming. It's not a recognized counseling theory or counseling approach. It's been controversial over time, more so because of the two guys that invented it. But I find that there's a lot of valid things about it. And it's almost kind of like cognitive behavioral therapy on steroids. So I don't know. Some people are a big fan, other people are not. Yeah, Gareth was saying, yeah, what was the other guy's name? I don't know, but I'm going to look it up real quick. Founders of NLP. Grinder, John Grinder, and Richard Bandler. If you're familiar at all with Tony Robbins, he's a big fan of using NLP in a lot of his approaches with people in general. Yeah, Richard, Gareth says, Richard claims to be able to cure schizophrenia. I just find that highly, highly, highly suspect. I would need, it's one of those things like extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. And I would definitely need to see extraordinary proof of that. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Jennifer was saying that she was diagnosed with PTSD and she's not jumpy. She's the opposite, actually. She just she's more on the dissociated side of the spectrum. Yeah, that numb, kind of flat, like just what normally is called like a flat affect. Yep, everybody processes trauma differently. It's so interesting. And that's people that tend to go more on the numb, avoidant, or dissociated side of things, that can present its own challenge because there's a lot of, because they can be so withdrawn. So, but I shouldn't even say that, because every single way that these different symptoms manifest present its own set of challenges. If you've got somebody that's really and they all have their own level, their own types of approaches and treatments. So, for example, this is kind of along the lines of this, but I was reading an article the other day over at the National Institute of Health on attachment theory, and they were talking about different treatments for different styles of attachment. I think I might have been saying this last week. This article was so fantastic. I love it so much. And anyways, that basically the whole concept is that, yes, we have this primary attachment style that we develop due to our primary caregiver's response to us as an infant. However, this attachment style, it's not set in stone. There are things that people can do to change this. And so if a person and attachment styles, responsiveness to others, I guess you could say, can be impacted by a wide range of things. So it's not just our primary caregiver's response to us. It can be different types of trauma that a person experiences throughout our life. Can cause us to become avoidant, or can cause us to be very anxious around another person, abuse being one of them. So what the article was saying was, if a person has more of that avoidant style of attachment, where they tend to be more withdrawn and kind of disinterested and in deep connections with other people, or even connections with other people, like they're just kind of more flat. Not saying that you are, Jennifer, but when people can be this way, I probably am more on this side of the spectrum, just for whatever that's worth. But that's something that can help with people that are more avoidant, can be engaging with them through a series of like self-awareness questions. So bringing them out of their shell and asking them things about themselves, and then sharing things about yourself, and all of that can help bring them out, versus a person who has more of that anxious attachment. What can help them is a level of reliability and safety and stability. So being around another person, and that other person could be just somebody that's another reliable person in their life, a therapist, a life coach, a trusted friend, a mentor, anybody that is kind of serving as this grounding force in their life, can help a person that has these more anxious attachment styles. So it's interesting how all of this can be interconnected. Martha says this troll's name on here. I'm not going to say it out loud, but she just says, "Oh my gosh, this name is so funny. YouTube has the most insane and wackadoo trolls, LOL." Yeah. Okay. And we'll just call him Hugh. Hugh says, "I'm not a troll. I'm more of a class clown." Yeah, I have to say, I really appreciate some of the names that people come up with on YouTube. It cracks me up. I can't even get upset if Hugh is really a troll, which who knows, time will tell. But either way, Hugh, props for that name. That's hilarious. And you get points just for creativity on that. Okay, so let me scroll up here. Yes, Elizabeth says, "I'm scared of intimacy, so I avoid it, and therefore I feel detached. Yay for self-sabotage." Right. And that's what you're describing, is more of, and a person can go back and forth between anxious and avoidant. And a lot of what you're describing is like, they want to be attached to other people, but there's this fear of, I can't be hurt anymore. And so I just avoid. So with that style, you see there can be a lot of push pull, where we want to get close to somebody, and we're oh, everything's great, everything's fine, until we start developing emotions or deeper emotions for that person. And then all of these fears are triggered. What if they're like my ex? When is the other shoe going to drop? What if they hurt me? What if? And then we start to panic. And the other person, and it can be, of course, it's not a conscious, I don't even think it's subconscious. I don't even think it's a subconscious self-sabotage. It's unresolved trauma is what it is. It's we want to be close, we're terrified because we don't want to be hurt. And so that's where that push-pull comes from. Okay, let me. Gareth says, did you know that some psychiatrists say that they can smell schizophrenia, and also dogs are said to be able to smell it as well? So it's fascinating. I've never heard of I have worked around hundreds of people that have had schizophrenia. Personally, I've never been able to smell a difference. I've never heard of people being able to smell a difference. Dogs, I know, can be trained to smell when a seizure is setting in, and cancer. I didn't know about schizophrenia. I'd have to look into that. But I guess if they're able to smell different, you know, hormonal fluctuations or just different chemical fluctuations in general in a person, I guess that could make sense, because schizophrenia, it's thought to be related to too much dopamine in the brain. So that, I don't know. I'd have to look into it. It's interesting. Ella May says, can dogs smell heart attacks? I don't know. I don't know if they have to be specifically trained I would think so, that they would have to be specific, because most support dogs for people that have epilepsy, like such severe epilepsy that, they need that added help of an animal alerting them or alerting other people. That dog is specifically trained for that. So, I mean, I'm just thinking of different dogs. All the dogs I've ever had have just been adorable and completely useless. So, like, worst guard dogs ever. Just in the guard dog department, the F minus, but in the adorable, cute and cuddly department, A plus. The dogs I've ever owned would have been terrible support animal. Well, I guess that would have been a good emotional support animals, but they would have been terrible, like medical support animals in any way, shape, or form. LMA says, yeah, my dog is a small, medium-sized Chihuahua. Yeah, mine was a mix. He was a Chihuahua Corgi Dachshund. And yeah, just he was lucky he was so cute. That's all I have to say about that. Okay, so let me Jennifer says, I was also diagnosed with dependent personality disorder, so I live alone and make my own way while stalemating in my job so I can remain avoidant. But I also ask everyone's advice on everything, or how to do everything without doing my own research, because I am so dependent still. And I have a long distance relationship, probably so I can have that avoidance and dependence. I hope I can get over this, because I do love him and I hope we can live a normal life together one day. Well, Jennifer, I think you have a tremendous amount of self-awareness, and I know I've told you that probably half a dozen times, and I really sincerely mean it. I think so much of moving forward into a happy, healthy, well-adjusted life is awareness. Awareness of the different imbalances of where we are, because everybody's got something. And sometimes most people I think have more than just something. There's quite a few imbalances present. It's just part of this human experience, you know? So it's I guess the way I look at it is it's more important that you have the awareness of, okay, these are some of the challenges that I have in my life. I've struggled with really needing external validation from others. I really struggle um, with depending on others and not wanting to be alone, but then also wanting to be avoidant. And if you have the kind of partner um, where you're able to discuss these things, and if ideally he's able to discuss his own fears and concerns as well, and you guys are able to have that open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication where there, like we were talking about earlier, where there is that level of emotional intimacy present. It's not about waiting to live life until we're fully healed. You know, it's about realizing, okay, where are we now? And when is stuff surfacing within me? And how can I communicate this? How am I coping with it or handling it when it's surfacing within me? And if I'm in a relationship with somebody else, um, how am I communicating it to them? And how are we able to discuss this and then move forward in a healthy way? So, um, it's just important to have these conversations. So, yeah, and the whole asking other people for advice, and I know we've talked about this before, and I hope this is a thing you just kinda run with because it's so empowering, and I know it can just seem so minute and so like, "Oh, well, that's not gonna make any difference," but it really does if you can start validating yourself and just start asserting yourself. Start with that. Start with just asserting yourself. We talked about before, if thinking about instead of saying like, "Oh, well, I don't know," or "I don't care," or whatever you wanna do, get start vocalizing an opinion. Yes, I would like to go have, salad for lunch, or I would like to go have pizza for lunch. Even if you're not dead set on salad or pizza, just vocalizing it. I mean, it's one meal of the day. Like the stakes are pretty low, right? You're gonna eat thousands of more meals in your life. So it's not a huge deal if you don't uh, land on exactly the one thing that you really, 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 really want. Just getting used to asserting your opinion and getting tapped into that. And the more you do that, the more comfortable that will become in time. And then the more comfortable that becomes, the easier it is to validate yourself because then you start to realize why. You find the why behind the want, I guess you could say. So, and again, I gonna just bring this up too. You'd mentioned, I really do love him and I hope we can live a normal life together one day. I wish for you a healthy life together one day. I just strongly encourage, I know it might just seem like semantics, but I strongly encourage you guys, don't aim for normal. Normal is just different degrees of dysfunction. It really, really is. Aim for what's healthy for you and getting clear on what that is. So don't look around. That's the worst. That's the worst thing that we can do. That's a great way to stay stuck, is looking around and being like, okay, well, what's normal? Well, my friend over here, she's been, her and her husband cheat on each other all the time. Or my friends over here, they yell all the time. And my friends over here, well, they drink all the time. And my friends over here, well, this person has no interest in being in a relationship, and he or she sleeps around all the time. So that might be normal, but it doesn't mean that it's healthy, and it for sure doesn't mean that it's healthy for you. So getting clear on what does healthy mean, and especially in relation to all of those different levels of intimacy that I was talking about earlier. So taking some time and doing some soul searching and journaling about that. Okay, let's scroll up here. Cad says, don't talk about pizza. Oh no. I know it does sound good, doesn't it? Um, Jennifer says, I always have this over preparedness type of thinking. Yeah, I think it depends on what that's about, um, or to what degree that over preparedness is um, present, I guess, in your life. Personally, I find that most people are grossly underprepared. So that it's just kind of a relative thing. I mean, if it's really negatively interfering with your life, your level of over preparedness, then it might be worth examining. But if it's, you know, like a level of reasonable preparedness where you're thinking, okay, well, how would I handle this situation? To me, I think that's mature. Um, you know, like budgeting and having money in savings and having jumper cables in your car and having a little, I don't know, a little what if bag, a little first aid and a blanket and, I don't know, bottle of water, a bottle of washer fluid, stuff like this that's just in your car. Um, just situational awareness to me. That kind of stuff is just reasonable and healthy, but it depends on to what level you're talking about, um, over preparedness. Jennifer says, for instance, my purse is heavy because I have everything in the kitchen sink in it. I do have an umbrella in there. So close. Yes. Well, and sometimes it and she says, yes, I am that type of person. I could probably live out of my car if I had to. Uh, I think it just depends on if it's negatively impacting your life or not. Um, the hard thing is with people that tend to be over prepared like that is it's probably paid off, right? So it's really difficult for us to break a lot of these habits if we've actually used things that we're, lugging around. So, uh, yeah, I don't know if I'd stress too much about it. But then I guess thinking about, okay, if you didn't have your umbrella, then what would you do? Or if you didn't have, I don't know, your little travel sewing kit or your whatever you're toting around, like what would you do? You would be fine. Like you would figure it out. You could run down to the gas station and get another one. You could, uh, you know, you, if you forget your umbrella and it rains, you get wet. It's okay. You're not yeah, not the wicked witch. You're not going to melt. So not ideal, but survivable, right? Okay, let's see. Let's scroll up here. Um, Sunny Day says that she has a milk crate with just in case kind of stuff. Jennifer says, I was also diagnosed by a psychiatrist with obsessive compulsive disorder, but my therapist thinks that I have obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Is it possible to have both? Would obsessive compulsive personality disorder explain problems with decision making? Um, I guess it depends on who you talk to with when there's a lot of overlap between things, there tends to be trying to kind of like rule out um, and narrow it down. So more with like the obsessive compulsive stuff, um, would that explain problems with decision making? I mean, it can, especially if there's that underlying like perfectionist tendency there, or if you're doing a lot of these things for to kind of relieve anxiety. That can be it, but it's very that level of anxiety when we do things that are very routine oriented. We can't deviate from that routine, or when we're doing things um, obsessively, it's generally to relieve some sort of anxiety that we're feeling. And that anxiety tends to be over needing control. So we probably felt like we didn't have enough control at some point in our life. So it could be stemming from a wide number of things. Um, I have you ever tried EMDR for processing some of your past traumas? And if so, I would be curious to know what your experience was. Like, did it help at all? And if so, or if it didn't, what did you notice at the end of it all? Jennifer says, my whole life is very routine oriented: dressing, showering, doing dishes, working, etc. Yeah, it, we're all, the humans are so interesting, aren't we? Like the way that so much of our behavior it's just so comes from just such a deep place in our brain. And like we don't, we so struggle with knowing why we do what we do. It's just so fascinating. Uh, for people that struggle with feeling out of control, it can manifest in two very different ways. It can be that kind of overcompensation, or that compensation for that. Okay, I felt so out of control, so now I'm going to start controlling everything. And that gives them it's a sense of predictability. It's a sense of safety and security and comfort. It's the knowing I can impact my environment and I can control what I can control. To some extent, that can be a positive self-soothing thing that we can do, is to put ourselves on a schedule. But it could, like anything else, it can be taken to an extreme where the scheduling itself becomes obsessive, and we have a very difficult time breaking that, because it's like if we don't do that, then everything's just going to spin into chaos, or we're going to feel that we messed up, or there's just going to be all of this uncomfortable emotions that surface: guilt and shame and stress and all kinds of things. The opposite end of the spectrum tends to be what Elizabeth was saying is, well, what do you think about avoiding activities? Is it self-care if I work out when I don't feel like it and I don't enjoy it? Should I push myself to do it because it's good for me? So it's everybody interprets this stuff differently. So sometimes if a person is feeling really anxious, they either they can go to, you know, that extreme of being overly meticulous about everything, that real kind of more of the OCD side of the spectrum, or they can go the other way and just go into complete collapse. Um, and there's other ways you could say, um, so like that, I guess a different form of that complete collapse is they withdraw completely and they become very messy. They just quit caring. And I think you could probably fit hoarding in there somewhere, where it's this kind of in the middle of this obsessive need for things, to put things around them, that things make them feel safe. So, and it's this need of, I can't get rid of anything because what if I need it? And it all has value and it can serve a purpose, kind of a thing. So anxiety just manifests in a wide number of ways. But back to what you were saying, Elizabeth, Uh, she says, is it self-care if I work out when I don't feel like it and I don't enjoy it? I think it depends on the context of how much working out are we talking about, and um, is this something that you normally enjoy? So, and can you substitute? Let's say, for example, let's say you're talking about running and you're like, you know what, man, I really don't feel like waking up at 5 a.m. and running a mile or 5 miles. Um, do you have like alternative ways of exercise that you do enjoy, that if you don't feel like running one day, that you could go swimming, or that you could go rollerblading, or that you could go to yoga, or something different? And I guess I would also want to know, how often are you feeling like you need to push yourself? Because every once in a while, I mean, that's just part of it, you know? I was shocked to find out my brother's a personal trainer and he's just ripped. And I was shocked to find out that he didn't always like going to the gym. I was like, oh, because here I had the mentality of, well, I just don't like going to the gym. And my brother one day was like, well, Dana, I don't either a lot of the time. And it never dawned on me. I was like, oh, I actually thought you just always loved going. He's like, no, I'm tired. I don't feel good. I'm hungry, or I'm too full, or, there's something going on. He's like, I go because I know I'll feel better afterwards, you know? So it's just, I guess it just kind of depends on how you look at it. Let's see here. Ella May is mentioning, she says, I'm on SSI and I'm also struggling to make ends meet. I really need to find a job. And I had mentioned this site before, and I will have to look into it and see if I can go through the process of signing up for it, so I can leave a link that you guys can just follow to it. But it's a site called Cambly, CAMBLY.com. And if you are a native, my guess would be that probably for any language, but I'm just familiar with English because I live here in the United States. But for native English speakers, you can sign up, and basically you don't need anything other than to be a native English speaker. So you sign up to basically be a conversation partner for somebody who's wanting to practice their English. And you would put a little profile online, you set your own hours, uh, you know, and you decide, you're in control over how many hours you work, you know, how long you're meeting with people, you name it. So that can be a really great way to make some extra income, especially if you're at home or you're in between jobs, or you just like to talk to people from around the world, because I think that's kind of fun. So that's something to think about. So CAMBLY, Cambly.com. Gemma says, I'm 44 and I've been no contact with abusive family members for 13 years because I've been trying to heal from OCD and PTSD. However much I plead with them, they refuse to leave me alone. I can't take it. What to do? Well, so if a person across the board, if somebody is not respecting your boundaries, a boundary is only as effective as the consequence that follows it. So if, telling a person, if we're finding ourselves, just stuck in this cycle of, I told you, I don't want to talk to you. Geez, please, like, just leave me alone. And they keep doing it. And we keep telling them, they know, they heard you the first time. So now it's not like a miscommunication thing. It's about, they don't respect your boundaries, which you already know if they've already been abusive, because that's the problem with abusive people, is they have no concept of appropriate boundaries. So then it's going to be up to you. So then you have a wide range of things that you could do. You could potentially block them. You can change your phone number. You can just not get back to them. Uh, Anytime you respond, I told you I don't want to talk to you. I told you to stop calling me. You're in their eyes, you're reopening communication. You're cracking the door open to yell, to say, hey, leave me alone. It's much more effective to leave that door shut and to just not open it. They will eventually go away, or you might have to just block them. And if it, um, and you might have to change social media, names or phone numbers or what have you to get some peace in your life. If they don't respond to that, then you can go for a restraining order. Let's see here. Oh, well, thank you, Violet. She says, Dana, it's my first time live. It's 10:40 in the morning here in Seoul, Korea. Thank you for your videos and live streams. It's helping me heal so profoundly. That is awesome. Well, we are glad you are here. So welcome. And okay, Gemma says that she also just signed up to Cambly and waiting to see if she's been accepted. Well, that is so exciting. You'll have to let me know how that goes. Let's see here. Let me scroll up. Zachary says that he's been a conversation partner before and it was a wonderful experience. Yeah, it's fun. With my first degree, part of it was English as a second language. And I really thought I wanted to work with adults with English as a second language. And I just absolutely loved, but this was back in the day. Like internet really wasn't a thing that was used back then. But it was so fun meeting with other adult students on campus who were from all over the world and getting to hear about their customs and their input and kind of what a day in a life was like for them. And it's just amazing how different everybody is across the world. It's just so cool. So it can be interesting. Just definitely broadens your horizons about life, I guess. Yeah, Jennifer says her whole therapy session today was pretty much all on fitness. My boyfriend says that exercising isn't about feeling good, but you have to power through it if you want results. But my therapist, who's a big fitness junkie, says that's not true. You have to be intuitive with your body. Yeah, I think there definitely is that line there. Like if your knee is really hurting, you don't want to keep pushing yourself because then you're going to get a knee injury. So there's that point between, it's one thing if you're just not motivated to do it, but it's another thing if you're continually not motivated or in pain and you're trying to really push through it, because that's how injuries happen. I don't know. I think it's good to have a menu of activities. I need to take my own advice on that. I need to really get back into aerial yoga. I just love it so much. So yeah. And I guess if you don't enjoy the workout that day, is there anything that you can do to make it enjoyable? Do you have a certain playlist that gets you jazzed, or just does something else need to change? Um, Jennifer says, I was thinking about doing Cambly, but I'd probably have to be good at chit chat. I am not, LOL. I will say that sometimes the people that are the quietest can be the best conversation partners, because they there's more of a concerted effort to making conversation. And the more reserved a person is, the more they um, can take a more sincere interest in the other person. And they're focused on, because if you can get somebody else talking, that takes a lot of pressure off. So you don't need to do all the talking, but asking them, what is your favorite food? What do you do for fun? So thinking, you could even just pull up a bunch of questions online and go through them and have them explain them to you. So there's ways around that you could definitely make it work if you were really interested in it. Let's see here. That's a big one. Yeah, Truth Seeker was saying, I'm also just learning to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. A lot of the negative reaction from disordered people is simply an adult tantrum / street theater, even though their emotions aren't at all sincere. Yeah, that's such a beautiful place to be, with learning to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's one of those lessons I have to remind myself of on a regular basis, and it never gets old hearing it, because it's just so powerful, of bringing stillness to that moment and then realizing, yes, I'm uncomfortable. And what about this is uncomfortable? And it just going deeper, just sitting there in that discomfort. It's powerful stuff. Carolina says, on exercise, I could die if I have to do 10 minutes on a treadmill. I hate the gym, but I found out that I adore classes. I believe it becomes a team building thing, like you pull others and they pull you. Yes. Isn't it so, it's so interesting how different people just love different things. It truly is just knowing yourself and what juices you, because there's so many different ways to move our body and to, you know, it's yeah, it's finding what juices you. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up. Like for treadmills, I'm not a big runner. Uh, it's just not comfortable. I'm not built for speed. I'm like 5 feet tall and I have big boobs and a bad back. So it just does not work. But I absolutely love getting on a treadmill and walking at a pretty decent pace with a good podcast. Love that. That's my thing. I used to do that podcast. This is how jumpy I am too. I used I used to, put in like iTunes or whatever and go and just go for a walk outside. But I found if I have headphones in, I'm like ridiculously jumpy, like hidden camera level jumpy. It's ridiculous. Where anybody, they could be across the street walking their dog barks, and I jump 3 feet in the air. So I can't even, I have to be able to hear what's going on around me when I'm outside. So I can only do the earphone thing if I'm home alone. It's ridiculous. Ah. That's good. Truth Seeker says, realizing that a narcissist's negative reaction to boundaries are a reflection of them has helped tremendously. I am so glad that helps. Making that shift is it's such a big one. Realizing, you know what, your boundaries are your boundaries. Everybody's boundaries are different. And like, that's just part of getting along with other people. Is if that person's going to be in our life, it's going to be respecting their boundaries, but it's also going to involve having a healthy understanding of what healthy boundaries are. That's the challenge with narcissists in general, people that have no boundaries in general, is they don't have boundaries. So they have no idea of where they start and end, and where another person starts and ends. And so they might just go based off of what they've always done or what they feel entitled to, which is oftentimes really controlling, enmeshed, way big time blurred boundaries. And you can tell how, if your boundaries are healthy or if they need some work, a lot of the times based on how you're feeling. So what I mean by that is, if you look at if our boundaries are you feeling irritated, frustrated, angry, upset, resentful, things along that spectrum, that tends to be due to it's boundary stuff. Generally, a lot of the time, it's our boundaries or our expectations of another person's behavior is not falling in line with our expectations, or our expectations of their behavior is not falling in line with reality, the reality of their behavior. Or our boundaries aren't appropriate. We think, well, I should, let's say, for example, I think it's completely appropriate for me to, here's an example. Here's a real life example that I've been struggling with for a while. My father has been ill, very ill, for about a year now. And, I'm a former nurse. And so the helper in me wants to jump right in and wants to be there. And I want to review his lab results, and I want to talk to his doctor, and I want to see what on earth is going on and why this is not getting resolved. But when I do that, I have found, at first it was wanted. My dad was like, "Oh, this is great. You know what you're looking at. You can be a part of this." But then I realized there's things that he's not telling me. There's things that he doesn't want to change. And there's things that he just feels that he has to justify, as far as, medicines he does or doesn't take. And I just felt like there was a lot of, it was my approach with being that involved wasn't helpful. It was actually getting to the point where it was counterproductive. And so I really struggled with, I wanted to be in control of this because I wanted to get to the bottom of it and I wanted to fix it. And this was a blurred boundary on my end. And so this wasn't obvious to me right away, because I wanted to fight that. I really wanted to fight for my boundary and to get my dad to see things my way, and to just let me take charge with it. And we were just butting heads, and it was making him feel worse because he wanted to do things his own way. He's an adult. He's obviously entitled to do that. I have no control over what he does. So realizing, okay, this is a blurred boundary here. I need to really take a step back, because even though I feel that this is, I'm coming from, my intentions are good. I'm coming from a place of wanting to be helpful and want for his highest and greatest good. This is not the result that I'm getting. I'm getting a lot of pushback and resentment, and that's not my goal. So I need to take a step back and reevaluate my approach. And even if it means that there's negative health consequences for him, because what I'm doing right now isn't working. It's frustrating me and it's annoying him. And so it's not working. So having to let go of that is really, really difficult. So, but for people, and we all have blind spots, so I'm not saying that by any stretch that I have it all figured out, but for a person who doesn't understand what they have control over and what they don't have control over, or they're in a situation, like mine, where it's a highly emotional situation, and they know what they have control over and they know what they don't have control over, but they're in denial about it. And they're having a really hard time admitting what they don't have control over, because that's where I was in that situation. When they're not respecting the boundaries of others, even if they're well-intended, that just causes a lot of problems. So I think what I'm saying here is it's important to understand When a person is boundaryless, and they tend to be across the board, especially with a lot of like deeply dysfunctional behavior, uh, where there's, and you guys know what I'm talking about. It's just continually jaw dropping, like the level of expectation, the level of like entitlement, um, requests, these kinds of, there's no filter. It's just whatever they want, they feel like they should be able to do, regardless of how it's being received by other people. A person has to have a healthy sense of appropriate accountability and responsibility for themselves and for other people. Like, where is that line in order for them to have even the potential for healthy boundaries? And so the result is, so oftentimes when we have a person who's boundaryless in our lives, especially if we grew up around that, it can be very easy for us to think that we must be in the wrong because of the way that they see the world. To them, it's completely appropriate that I don't know, that you're, I don't know, 20, that you're 35 years old and you go home to visit your mother, and she uh, does all of your laundry and um, uh, gives her opinion on, reads your journal and goes through your phone. And did you see what I'm saying? Stuff that is it's a boundary thing, where if the mom's not aware of that, then and if we're not aware of it, it can be difficult for us to see it because that's all we've known. And it can be easy for us to think, well, we're in the wrong. She's my mother. She cares. That's why she's reading my journal and doing all of my laundry and going through my phone. But it's when we understand what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, um, where we begin and end and where another person begins and ends, then things begin to fall in line. But without that level of awareness, it's all blurred. And then we're lost in this self-doubt of, do I have a problem, or do they, like, where's the problem? So I hope that makes sense. Oh, well, thank you, Mark. He says, thank you, Dana, for your time and helping me through a big relationship. I've been listening to your channel since 2016. Thank you again for your validation. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mark, for your kind words. I'm really glad that that I've been able to help since 2016. That's just awesome. And thank you for the live stream donation. I appreciate it. Oh, my goodness. Thank you, Debbie. Says, hi, Dana. My donation won't go through via Visa. Please leave your PO address in the comments and I'll send a check to you. Thank you so much, Dana, for all you do to help so many of us. Love you and hugs, everyone. Thank you, Debbie. So I don't know if that just went through or not. I think it did. So definitely check that before you do anything, before you send me anything else. I appreciate it. And just for the record, you guys, live stream donations, it's absolutely never expected. It's always appreciated, but never expected. So please just know that. I love to be able to do this. Let's see here. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Okay, it looks like Lita has a question. So yes, I will go ahead and say that too for people that are new here. I cannot read and think and talk all at the same time. So I have to stop the chat when I'm thinking or talking. So if I don't get to your question, it's nothing personal. It's because the little hamster on my wheel can only go so fast. If I don't see your question, normally Jack and Truth Seeker and a couple other people do a pretty good job of getting my attention. So let's see. Okay, let me scroll up. Okay, so she asks, how do we deal with narcissistic religious family? So, and Leah, if I understand, okay, let me scroll down here a little bit. Okay, that's what I thought. Lita is from the Middle East, and unfortunately, she still lives with a very narcissistic religious family, and she sees them and she can't go no contact. Okay, so you bring up a really valid point, because we talk about no contact or on this channel quite often, and a lot of it's going to depend on context of a person's situation, especially when we're talking cultural context like that. So what I would encourage you to do, if you can't go no contact, you still see them, would be to try to carve out peace in your life. So it can help to arrange things as best as you can, where you're able, because all you have control over, all any of us have control over, is ourselves. So setting things up in a way of, okay, instead of, for example, having them over for dinner, okay? Because when you do that, then you're kind of, if they don't take a hint, or if they just flat out don't care, they may not leave on their own time schedule, right? They might just leave when they feel like they want to leave. Versus if you can switch things around to where maybe you go over to their house or another relative's house or a restaurant or what have you, where you can leave. If the conversation's starting to get too heated, you're just tired, or you only really want to be there for, I don't know, not a very long time, enough for just to kind of say hi, and then you're able to come up with some sort of reason that you need to leave. It's a lot easier for you to be in a situation where you can distance yourself instead of trying to get them to go. So thinking about ways that you can do that kind of across the board. It's difficult because generally in families like that, especially if we're talking, if it's generational, and you've got, there's also cultural pressure and potentially religious pressure for people to interact in a certain way. These are all added challenges. So I don't know if you're married or what your situation is, but are you alone in this, or is there somebody else in your family that sees this and they're like, boy, this is really something? Ideally, if you're with somebody, if you're married to somebody, or you have another family member, like a sister or somebody else who feels the same way, like, boy, this is really exhausting, this is really crossing the line, then you can kind of come up with some strategies together on how to just kind of get some distance and keep your distance. So I would be curious to know, and it's difficult. I'm a big fan for telling the truth and for being assertive. However, there are certain situations where that really isn't that helpful. And sometimes when we're talking about like religion, cultural things, or we're talking about just really dangerous, destructive people who are not going to respect your boundaries at all. They're not going to respect what you say. I'm a big fan. I think the most important thing is for you to try to get and keep as much peace as you possibly can in your life. So if it comes down to you saying, hey, I have a headache, and that gets you out of dinner, or that gets you from having to go someplace that's just toxic, I think in those types of situations, that's okay, because being assertive with certain people tends to make things worse and not better. And so I think it's important to really kind of, pick and choose your battles well. Lita says, I isolated myself for 5 years. I avoid them as much as I can. Do you have any support system around you at all? Any friends or uh, anyone? Oh, okay, let's see. I'm going to scroll up. Gareth is asking about the hurricane. I don't know. That's a good question. Last I heard, it was supposed to, thankfully, it was downgraded. It was supposed to hit Florida, and it was going to be a pretty major hurricane. But then I think it took a turn, and it's heading more towards like the Carolinas. But I don't know. Is anybody here in the hurricane area? And if so, how are you doing? And Zachary, people are talking a little bit about religion here. He mentions in his personal experience, narcissists tend to use religion in a superficial way to avoid accountability. And yes, and then that's the thing. When you have a person that has an unhealthy ego, this unhealthy sense of self, they're going to interpret, that's their filter to the world. So everything is, so just if you can try to imagine, if you really just think that nothing you do is ever a problem, and that you think everything that you do is right because you have an excuse, you have a reason for it. Well, that person cut me off in traffic, and that's why I pulled a gun on them. And my brother forgot to buy, he drank all, I don't know, he drank all of the milk in the fridge, and that's why I yelled at him. And so if our behavior is only contingent based on how we feel, it's not based on what's appropriate. It's not based on having that level of like self-restraint. And then when a person has that level of entitlement, and they just, everything that they filter is through that. And that's what's so dangerous, is if a person's emotionally immature like that, anything, therapy, religion, self-awareness, even these kinds of things, they're only going to take that and spin it to what matches their worldview. And this isn't even, oftentimes it's not a conscious thing. It's just, a person's level of, who said that? Einstein or somebody was saying, the person, your level of thinking is not going to be the same level of thinking to solve the problem. So the same level, the level of thinking that got you into this problem isn't going to be the same level of thinking that'll get you out of it. So we'll have to grow as a person in the way that we see ourselves and the way that we see the world. With pathological people, it's just, their mindset is just so fundamentally skewed. This is why when people talk about, what if my ex changes for the next person? But that question is already showing that this person the person who's asking that is seeing it as like simple behavior. Well, what if they just stop like yelling and cussing and hitting and intimidating and become this dream partner for this next person? And it's like, man, there's like, I hope you can see. I think it can help for some people to see, instead of, what if a person were, every time they got upset, they took a baseball bat and they broke all the windows? I think that would be easier for a person to see, like, this is really wild behavior. This is not normal. Adults don't do this. And that stuff's deep-seated. So what are they going to stop going around and smashing all the windows with the baseball bat every time they get frustrated or things don't go their way or you disagree with them or what have you? Probably not. But even if they did, they would have to unlearn. There's a reason why they're acting that way. And it's because they don't have healthy boundaries, and they don't have healthy means of coping when it comes to stress. And they just don't have, the biggest thing is they just don't have healthy boundaries. So anybody that feels entitled to lash out and be destructive like that, whether it's with the baseball bat and windows, or it's verbal abuse or emotional abuse or what have you, these are some really, really profound behaviors that show a lack of emotional control, that show a lack of respect for boundaries. This is extreme stuff. So yeah, it's problematic. People will use whatever they can in order to, we all do this, but the problem is with people that have a really dysfunctional mindset, whatever information they come across, they use it to further support their worldview. And that's when you start getting cult leaders and really problematic religious leaders. Whenever you see any really extreme ideology that's dangerous and destructive, you've got dysfunctional thinking at the root of that. So, okay. Jennifer, I don't know. She says, do you know by any chance if emotional support animals can have their apartment fees and deposits waived? I imagine it varies by state. I'm in Michigan. My guess would be is if you Googled that, can my landlord, or if I have an emotional support animal, do I need to pay a deposit in Michigan? You'd probably be able to find out. The other option would be to look up housing authority in whatever state and call them and ask, because sometimes you might get landlords that, best case scenario, they're not familiar with the law and they just view an emotional support animal as a pet. Worst case, you get somebody who's just kind of a slumlord trying to make, some quick money any way that they can, and they don't care about the law. So the more, when you can hear it from the housing authority, that can help back it up. Oh, that's terrifying. Jennifer says, my ex used to chase people while waving his crowbar out the window if he was in a rage. Yikes. Yeah, that kind of stuff is really scary. Oh, well, thank you, Gareth. He says, I always feel inspired after hearing you, Dana. Well, thanks. Let's see. Let's scroll up here. Martha says, I struggle with the fact that I had a huge fight response with my mom because that was the only way I felt I could defend myself. I'm just glad I'm open to working on myself. It's wonderful that you have that level of awareness. I tell you, it's always so much easier seeing issues in other people. And it's so difficult seeing the stuff within ourselves. And then when we do see it within ourselves, fully acknowledging it and not trying to defend it or justify it or any of that, just being like, yeah, you know what? I'm doing this and that's a problem. Yikes. And I need to stop. It's hard. It's so hard to be honest with ourselves and to figure out what we need to work on. But that's a huge, huge, huge step. So congratulations on that. It's amazing. It's amazing. Like there's so many, all of these things about us that we do on a regular basis that we don't even realize. And it's just such a game changer when we are able to bring that into awareness and to start working on it. Carmelita says, my Bible study group just got an influx of new congregants, and I'm a bit overwhelmed with so many people. I felt so safe there previously. Now I feel I may get lost. Well, I would say that that's probably a pretty normal response that I think a lot of us would have when there's a whole influx of new people. It's sort of like when you start your first day of school and everybody's brand new and everything has changed. It can be overwhelming. So I guess, well, hopefully you can start meeting some new people. It might be a good way to look at it of you might have one or two of your next best friends in that new group of new congregants. So now it's just finding out where they are. So that can sometimes thinking about it that way can make meeting new people more fun of figuring out, okay, who's going to be my next church BFF, or who's going to be my next bingo buddy or whatever it might be. Violet asks, Dana, aren't you fearful of your exes getting back to you as you are so open about their names and the relationships you had? She says, recently I found my ex from when I was 19 or 20 searching for me on a YouTube channel that was my nickname. I'm 33 and I've been no contact since. I was intending to start a YouTube channel about my painting, but I freaked out, gave up on it, and even sold my camera I bought for it. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. And I've said this for years. I really should just make a brief video series about this kind of stuff, because I know a lot of people have thought about starting their own channel, and I have learned a lot of really scary, hard lessons the painful way, and it just doesn't need to be that. So to briefly answer your question, when I started this YouTube channel, I wasn't really familiar at all with YouTube. And I had watched some like Eckhart Tolle videos on YouTube. I wasn't super into YouTube, I guess is what I'm saying. I didn't, it's funny now looking back on it, how little I knew about it, and which was probably a good thing, because that level of ignorance, had I known, I probably wouldn't have started. I really thought I was going to just put up a bunch of videos on YouTube and that would be it. I didn't really anticipate anybody watching them. I didn't have any expectations, really. I just kind of thought, I'm just going to put these videos out and hopefully they'll help somebody. That was it. And it was a huge learning curve with, I didn't think, like, I'm getting comments. Oh my gosh, I didn't think about how I got to figure out how do I respond to comments now. And oh my gosh, yeah, saying I've never said their last names. But yeah, saying their names, and then, oh my gosh, what if they try to contact me? What if they have an attorney try to contact me? What if, thankfully I live very far away, like 20 something hours away from them. So I don't worry about them showing up at my doorstep. Um, these kinds of things, using my name. Um, yeah, lots of things like that. Lots of lessons learned the hard way. I would just encourage you, if anybody is thinking about starting, or even a blog or Facebook or any of this, um, to I would just encourage you to strongly consider, at least at first, not putting out your full name. If you want to, if anything, just put your first name out there. Um, but once you say it, you can't unsay it, kind of a thing. So that's something to consider. And then, um, yeah, so my situation would be different. And as far as if they contact me, I had to get to the place where because I couldn't unsay it. I'd already done a ton of videos talking about my experience. And when I realized, when people really began watching my videos, literally felt sick to my stomach for a very long time. There was probably about a whole span of like a year where I began panicking of, oh my God, what have I done? And that was awful. That was really, really awful. And then I had people, that were looking me up. And I had people that were calling my work. I was terrified about the day that somebody would just show up at my place, or somebody's upset, angry ex was going to show up at my place or my work. I had a lot of legitimate fear, I think, at that point. And that's when I ended up getting a post office box in a different city. And thankfully now I work from home. So there is no place where people can find me because I have my PO box out there. And as far as if I ever get contacted by my exes, or if they have an attorney contact me, like I said, I had to make peace with this. So I had to think about, okay, how would I handle this? And I realized, okay, since I'm physically safe, I can't stress that part of the story enough, because some people aren't. Some people are still in the same city, in the same house, and they have shared custody. I would, if you're going to do a YouTube channel about that, I would change all of the names involved. I would change any potentially significant details that people would know. And I wouldn't film you. I would film like a candle or a plant or something else, something that's not identifying, just in case. But for me, I had to get to the point of, okay, worst case scenario, what happens if this were to happen? And then I realized I would fight it, because I know what I'm saying is the truth. I have documentation to support that what I'm saying is the truth. And I would just try to roll with it as much as I possibly could. I would bring as much attention to it. I would film the whole thing. And, if they want a circus, I'll bring a circus. But I don't think that they will, for a lot of different reasons. But, I don't know how much YouTube either of them watch. They're older, for starters, and they're far away. And like I said, I've never used their last names, which it's not that I care about their privacy or that their rights, because I don't. If you don't want people to know about awful things you're doing, then don't do awful things, kind of a thing. But I also wasn't looking to get people. I wasn't looking for like vigilante justice either. So. Rebecca asks, do you ever fear that people are watching you while you're walking somewhere? Like your ex might be stalking you? Me? No. There's times where I've felt that way, but again, thankfully I live so far away that I'm not worried. If I was still in the same city, I'd probably be looking over my shoulder all the time. and locking my doors and getting cameras on the outside of my house. So if you've been around somebody that's threatened, even hinted at being violent or scary stuff, that's unnerving, and it's understandable for a person to be unnerved. So, if that's your situation, it's not paranoia if you know somebody is making threats or thinly veiled threats. So, yeah, that's scary, and I would encourage anybody that's living in a situation like that, if it is at all. I know moving um, can be, it's expensive, it's inconvenient, it's a pain, it's not fair, all of these things. But I'm a big fan of thinking about what will give you peace of mind, and then making that a priority. So if and it's one of those things too, with if you are able to move, it's amazing. You don't realize how much stress you've been carrying around until you've been able to get some distance. Even if you stay in the same city, just getting some distance and kind of getting off the radar, getting a PO box, um, where your address isn't known. These kinds of things can really help a person just breathe easier. It's really difficult to handle and to reduce anxiety when you're still in that fight or flight stage, when you're still always looking over your shoulder, wondering, where are they? When are they going to surface? What are they going to say? What are they going to do? So Jennifer says, somebody asked me recently if I was autistic, and I asked my therapist, but she said I have too much empathy to be on the autism spectrum. Can people that suffer from CPTSD seem like they have autism? Well, my guess is, Jennifer, based on what you were saying before, uh, well, and I guess let me back up too. With autism, that's also on a continuum, and um, so let that be said. Uh, the with I think when people often say, like, okay, is this person, do they have autism? Um, are they on the spectrum? Oftentimes what they're referring to is either like a level of like emotional disconnection, or some kind of they're missing certain social cues, or um, just kind of socially behavior that comes across as odd, or just not socially mm, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. It's just a little left of center. It's just a little behavior that can be a little bit off. And again, all of this is on a continuum. So, but what you were saying earlier about struggling with feeling really disconnected, and that you don't have a startle response, it's more of that feeling of just kind of emotional flatness, that I'm just guessing that might be something that other people are picking up on, that there's just this lack of a full range of emotional expression, which is very common for people that have experienced trauma of any kind. So, um, a part of that, getting in tune with those emotions, is intentionally. So, like what I was saying earlier, with people that struggle with being avoidant, that don't want to be avoidant, they're trying to sincerely make a connection with other people again, but they've been so hurt that they just don't know how. One of the things that can help is doing these relationship building exercises. So asking questions, getting them to open up, getting them to learn how to re-engage with other people, and asking other people about themselves, and listening. And it's reducing these defenses. With emotional expression, it can be very much the same way. So it can be intentionally going about and kind of milking these different emotions of joy, of contentment, of closeness, these things. So you're intentionally, um, kind of stoking the fire of these different emotions within you. it can help to watch videos. It can help to record yourself. It can help to, and this might sound really strange, but for a person who is used to just kind of being disconnected from their emotions, it can help to record yourself and to practice different facial expressions of, okay, just, I know it sounds strange, but it's true, because our physiology affects our psychology. So our body movements affect our thinking, and our thinking affects our body movements. So, for example, if a person's been through a lot, here's another example. This is something that I had to do. For a long time, I really had difficulty smiling, and because I didn't feel like it. And my whole life imploded. And um, it was it reminded me a lot of that scene from, I think it was the movie Dances with Wolves, where there was one boy, and it's been, God, 20 years since I've seen that movie, but there was one boy in the movie, and I forget what they called him, like Happy or something, and or he who laughs a lot, something like that. But then he went through this traumatic event and he no longer smiled. And it was this disconnection because, like, his name didn't match him anymore. Like, that's how I felt. And so part of me being determined with moving forward and healing was finding my smile again, because I used to smile all the time, and I didn't want to lose that about myself. And so I would sit in front of the mirror and I would force myself to smile, and it felt like the most unnatural thing in the whole world, but it helped me to practice that. And it was weird. It helped me to, like, reconnect to that. And so it can help intentionally experiencing these emotions within yourself until they do become part of, like, your emotional repertoire again. Um, let's see. Jennifer says they were asking if I had autism because I have a huge insect phobia. They thought it was because autistic people have a hard time with being oversensitized. So he thought maybe that's why I have an insect phobia. I even get scared around butterflies. Uh, uh, okay, so you're terrified of insects, even butterflies. No, that just means you're neurotic. I'm just kidding. No, that just means you don't like insects. Again, is it debilitating? Is it to the point where you have to dive inside your car if on a warm summer day and there's butterflies flying around? Or does this mean that you're not a fan? If you see them on a flower, the sidewalk, you're just going to kind of walk around. You know, it, different people are just not fans of certain. Some people don't like dogs in general, any dog. Some people don't like insects, any insects. Some people absolutely love insects. It just, I mean, from what you're saying, I don't think that means, I don't think that's anything terribly significant. I don't know if I'd worry about it unless it's debilitating and then something else. Oh, okay. She says, yes. Well, one time I even jumped out of a moving vehicle. She says, okay, it was going barely 5 miles an hour, but still. Well, okay. And it was a butterfly. That's too funny. I've known a few people that have had intense fears of butterflies. I will say, just to kind of give you an idea, you might be talking to the wrong person because I have a terrible fear of worms. I'm not a fan of snakes. I'm more scared of, well, they're, like, I don't want to spend the day with one. or go to like a snake museum. It's worms. I do know exactly why I fear worms, but because when my brother and I were kids, we used to collect the little doodle bugs, and this cup in our backyard. When it would rain, we would collect random animals in cups, and then we would go dump them out again. I don't know. You're very easily entertained, apparently. And this one day he thought it was hilarious, and he dumped a whole cup of worms down my shirt. And I didn't have a fear of worms before that, but I did after. And I cannot handle worms. So when it rains, there are times where I'm like, and I guess I'm going to be inside because I'm not going outside. What is the worm situation? I need a worm report. What is the worm to concrete ratio? Is there enough room for me to hop from, space to space to get out of my car? I've had two different situations now where there was one with my brother, and we were leaving a restaurant, and I forget what it was, but there were other people there too. I think family and stuff. And it had been raining and there were worms. This was in Houston. There were giant worms everywhere. And I completely lost it. And he had to give me a piggyback ride to the car because I could not. The thought of like walking and a worm flipping over onto my shoe, that would just be the end of it. And I've also had a situation. I was with a good friend of mine. This was years ago. We were out in Costa Rica and we were going for this wonderful walk along the beach. And she was showing me, this area that she just moved to. And I just happened to look down. And what started off as, I thought, well, that's funny. There's all of these really shiny, like shells all over the beach. This is really cool. And I happened to mention it to her and she said, oh, no, those are like sea slugs. And they were everywhere. They were everywhere. Like every 3 or 4 inches, there was one. And she said, here, and again, this is a long time ago, here, they just pump raw sewage just out into the ocean, but a lot of it gets all over the beach. And so when, animals, sea slugs and stuff eat this, but then when the tide goes out, there's all these sea slugs all over the beach. Well, it was, oh my God, screaming, bloody, just screaming, high pitched, awful, completely panicked screaming. And my friend, it has no idea what's going on. And I'm panicked so much. I'm climbing up her, trying to get on her back, but I'm panicking. So I'm just climbing all over her. And she thought it was hilarious, but she had to piggyback me off the beach. I couldn't move, terrified. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm the right person to be having this discussion to tell you what's normal or not when it comes to fears with that. Gosh. Yeah, normally as far as like overstimulation stuff goes with autism, it tends to be more like sight and sound and touch. So I'd have to, I'd have to really kind of Google it. That's just been my experience with working with people with autism. It's I don't know. It's almost along the lines of like highly sensitive people where it's just too much input. If you have people talk, and I can be the same way too. Like if there's people talking and the TV is on, it can just be stimulation overload. If there's sometimes it can be too many textures. It can be if you've got, again, like you've got the radio on and they're in traffic, and it's too many things going on at one time can be really this feeling of overload. Zachary says the lifespan of a worm is 15 days. Oh, see, that's the thing. I don't want them dead. This is my problem. I'm a huge animal lover, and even with worms, uh, and I tell myself that whenever I didn't know the 15-day thing, but, like, different insects, like a fruit fly or anything, I'm like, "Buddy, you just gotta live your best life. Like, you've got, 72 hours. You do it." Like, get clear on that bucket list, man, and just go for it because you gotta live the dream while you're here. Yeah, but I'm just not a fan of worms freak me out so much. I wish I could develop a healthier relationship with them, but I think I either vomit or pass out or both. Ugh, I don't know, they just freak me out so much. Let's see. Oh, I like that. Kira says, I saw a quote today that said survivors of any kind of trauma need to nurture three things: wisdom, courage, and hope. I like that. Can I add self love to that list? I think that's one of the things so many of us need to really nurture. LMA says, do autistic adults play with dolls and kids' toys? Because I like preschool toys, dolls and stuffed animals like Paw Patrol, Dora, and Minnie Mouse. Um, I wouldn't say that that's necessarily like an autistic trait. I mean, every person's different. My take on that would be that most people, when there's a term called regression. So when a person is either experiencing stress, and it doesn't have to be like major amounts of stress, but it can be, but as a way to self-soothe, and a lot of this is subconscious, that a person tends to regress, they go back age-wise to a time when they felt safe. And this is more commonly seen with children and adolescents, but adults can do it too. So, for example, you might see a 10-year-old child who goes through something traumatic. And again, it can be any number of things. And then and it could even be the birth of a new sibling, something that their environment's really changed up and they're having a hard time adjusting to it. They start regressing. They might start sucking their thumb. They might start doing baby talk. Um, you know, these kinds of things. Adults can do the same thing where, well, we felt safe at this certain point in our life. And so this is how we self-soothe, or this is a way that we self-soothe. Wonder Woman says, well, what if a 26-year-old still likes toys? I think it just depends on the context. I don't think there's anything wrong with liking toys. I think it's kind of can keep a person young at heart to an extent. If again, it's the degree and frequency that's more of the question. Can this person, are they deep in debt because they're buying toys? All they have are toys. Are they able to effectively engage with other adults and in a more 26-year-old type of way? Are their toys negatively impacting their relationships with other people? And if so, how do they feel about that? Is it are they more of like a collector, or is this more like fantasy play? And if it's fantasy play, how pervasive is it? Do you see what I'm saying? It's just kind of other factors that would need to be considered there. Okay. H1 says, Dana, I am autistic and I have sensory overload with sounds and sights, and I have to wear sunglasses in shops, etc. Yeah, I would be curious to know uh, about when did you notice this within yourself, the sensory overload with sounds and sights? And I guess, does it help? Like, what are some things that you do to help? Does it help to wear sunglasses and inside at shops and such? And thank you for sharing that. Uh, LMA asks, do autistic adults hit or push or kick? Again, that everything is just, it's on a continuum of behavior. There are adults out there with autism that you probably wouldn't even guess that they have autism. And then there's adults out there that have different, because every disorder, even though there's common traits with it, can manifest differently for different people. And everybody is also coming from a place of, there's different levels of um, self-awareness, of emotional self-regulation, of, um, it, other things that might be going on with the person. You know, it depends. The experiences that I have had with adults that, um, and I guess adults and children and teenagers that have had, um, that have been autistic, it's been, even I would say with, I'm just trying to think, like, even the ones I've worked with that have had severe, um, that lived in group homes, for example, that their parents, their families were unable to take care of them at home because their needs were so great. Uh, Even then, the hitting, pushing, attacking kind of stuff was it tended uh, to be in a response to, it was extreme. Like it was out of frustration, um, and or it was out of, if they weren't feeling well. So, and a lot of this was because with the people that I'm thinking of in particular, they were nonverbal. And so, and it was in a group home setting. So you had 5 or 6 other people. So it was difficult for them to get their needs met a lot. And being nonverbal, it's, unfortunately, sometimes if a person's unable to, to say anything, the attention goes to the people that are more, that are louder. So and that's not right and it's not fair, but those um, types of like physical behaviors would tend to escalate because that was their way of really communicating, like, hey, this is what I need at this time, or I'm frustrated, or I don't feel well, or something's going on. So, but like I said, it just depends on the person. There's quite a few, um, quite a few people that don't have any developmental challenges who yell and scream and hit and kick when they get frustrated or when they don't get their way, or what have you. That's interesting. H1 was saying, Dana, back then there was less info about autism, so I didn't know what was making me dizzy. So that was the physical, that's what you were experiencing physically, was it would be, you would start feeling very overloaded and overwhelmed, and it would just be the sensation of dizziness. Hmm. What asks, do drugs affect a narcissist and make it worse or heighten things? It, most drugs tend to exacerbate the state. Well, I guess it depends, right? I mean, cocaine's an upper, marijuana is more of a downer. So it depends on what they're on. It tends to kind of, if you're talking about anything that has the potential for like increasing aggression, tends to make things significantly worse. But it's not. And I guess I should ask: are you talking about prescription drugs, or like, or are we talking about like illicit substances here? But generally, even still, personality disordered stuff with like, especially with narcissism or antisocial personality disorder, prescription medication really doesn't help with that. So it's because it's not a chemical thing, it's a personality thing, it's a mindset thing. So, yeah. H1 says, Dana, getting dizziness since I was about 12. That is so interesting. Let's see, I'm scrolling up here. LMA says, I can't engage with adults in an adult way. I'm a collector of toys and I brush and comb Dora's hair. And you're 23. Well, and I guess it's, it's kind of worth exploring. It's worth exploring that. And, how does that make you feel? And what is it about, being around toys or collecting toys that makes you feel good? And sometimes it might be finding other adults that have similar interests. So if you're a big fan, like a lot of, let's say, for example, a lot of adults that are really into cosplay or that are into different types of, I don't know, fantasy type games. It's kind of finding people that have the similar interests can be kind of a challenge too, especially if your interests aren't terribly mainstream. But thankfully with the internet, it's a much easier way to connect with people that have similar things in common. H1 says, I have found that many autistic people have been targets of narcissists. They see us before we see them. Yeah, I think when you have, and really they target anybody based on what they think they can get out of them. But it's definitely that added challenge if they're sensing, if you've got a really manipulative person who is able to sense the vulnerabilities in others and figure out ways to exploit them. And it's definitely, yeah, it's heartbreaking is what it is. So, and it's difficult. It's teaching signs of manipulation, teaching, learning when you're uncomfortable. All of this kind of stuff is difficult for anybody at any age to really get down pat. And because this stuff's not taught and it's really not discussed, and it really needs to be. So, yeah, it's It's a challenge. I wish there was more talk about this because so many people get caught up and exploited, uh, by master manipulators, and the damage can just be absolutely horrendous. Huh, what? Says, okay, so my girlfriend is friendly to strangers, and I think it's a flirtatious kind of friendly. And she blames and calls me crazy and bipolar. But when I know she's being extra friendly on a level that I think is sexual, I think. Well, here's the thing with this is there's a couple things. Is we don't have to figure out if she's really being flirtatious or not, because we could debate that point, right? We could even have her here. I could even talk to her on the phone. And if she's going to debate the point, and even if we had her on video and we were pointing out, well, you know what, this is seeming kind of flirty and this is kind of inappropriate. And if she's just going to be denying it until she's blue in the face, then we're at an impasse, because that doesn't get anywhere. Oftentimes people know when they're being flirty, and but regardless, if everybody's boundaries are different. So if your boundary is, hey, you know what, I am not okay with the woman I'm dating to be, touching, hugging up on other guys and whatever she's doing, I don't know, sitting on their lap, or, just being overly personal with these men. And I can tell the way that they're looking at her, or that she's, that they feel like she's flirting with them. And that if I wasn't here, they would totally ask her for her number, or, that this is really uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable with the way that she's acting, it's okay for you to be uncomfortable with the way she's acting. Even if she's not being flirty or flirtatious, if it's, everybody's got their own boundaries with what's okay with them and what's not. So, it doesn't make you possessive or jealous or controlling. It's, people have that line, and it's okay to have that line. Then the challenge comes in is then figuring out, okay, now what? So if you're bringing it up to her, this is the part that's that I have. The other part of this that is concerning to me is you're bringing up your concerns, and she's calling you crazy and bipolar. That's not nice, and it's very minimizing and invalidating. So, and it's gaslighting another person. So it's not cool to say, if somebody has an issue, right? And you were to say, hey, I've really got this issue. And if I were to, let's just say me and you, okay? I were to tell a joke, and I think it's hilarious, and you don't. And you're like, hey, you know what? I really don't find, I don't know, racist, sexist, whatever jokes funny. I don't really either. But I were to say, oh, no. It's so funny. And I'm trying to convince you that your sense of humor is the problem, not my jokes. And, and, you're like, no, I just really, like, I don't want to hear stuff like that. It's not funny. It's not just, I don't like it. And if I were to say, oh, come on, you're too emotional, you're crazy, you're too sensitive, that kind of stuff, it's shaming a person. It's manipulative. It's shaming a person into trying to get them to see things your way. It's denying them their reality. And it's not okay. The reality with the sense of humor thing, or with the, questionable behavior thing, is that different people have their lines for stuff. If I find certain jokes offensive or certain jokes funny, that's my line, just like that's your line. But if a person, let's say we're friends, okay? And if I want to stay friends with you, then I need to respect that that's your line. Hey, don't tell, I need to not tell you jokes like this because you get upset. You don't find it funny. And it's the same thing when we're in a relationship with somebody. It's kind of navigating that middle ground of how you might act when you're single is going to be different than how you act when you're in a couple. And it doesn't mean that that's the other person's jealous or controlling. It's just respecting the other person. So, and sometimes it might mean, okay, then I just need to find a different partner. Like if I'm not okay with my girlfriend or my boyfriend doing certain things, then I'm just not okay with it. Like some other common examples of this have to do with porn, have to do with strip clubs, have to do with opposite sex friends in general, hanging out alone with opposite sex friends, hanging out alone with exes. These are all boundaries that a lot of couples have to kind of navigate. And it's okay to feel how you feel about certain things. So even if everybody else, um, you know, I don't know, is doing something, if it's not okay with you, then it's not okay with you. That's your line. And you want to be in a relationship where you can talk to the other person about these things, and it's the negotiating of these lines, not being minimized or invalidated and told that you're crazy. It's not about you being crazy. It's not about you being too emotional. It's not about you being jealous or controlling. It's about hey, this is stuff I'm not okay with, you know? LMA says, if I have a boyfriend, is it right for me to have other male friends? This is a line, a boundary that you will have to navigate with your boyfriend. Every couple is different. Some couples, I think by and large, it's important that people kind of just be mindful of it's really difficult to have platonic friendships. There's usually one person that has feelings. So just kind of being aware of that. And, if the person's always been a friend, there's never been any, sexual intimacy involved. It's not like it's an ex kind of a thing. Then just being sensitive with your partner of, okay, this person's my friend. They've always been my friend. We've never dated. There's never been anything going on. I can understand how this might make somebody else uncomfortable because it can just be asking for trouble, frankly. It's okay, but then if you're like, you know what, I'm more comfortable if we go out in a group, um, or how do you feel about this person, and then navigating those lines, and if those lines need to change in time, then having those discussions as they progress. Let's see here. What really gets me is when people have their friendships they have, and I see this a lot where they don't want to give up their friendships. They don't want to not even give up. They don't even want to like draw the lines there. They want to be able to act like they're single when they're dating somebody, and that doesn't work. So, um, it's normal and reasonable for the partner to be like, hey, you know what? I have a problem with you hanging out with with your ex-girlfriend or with your ex-boyfriend, and you're being squirrely and you're texting this person, or you're telling them when we have problems, or you're hanging out alone with them, or I want to be able, like, I'm cool if you have opposite sex friends, but I want to know them. Like I'm going to need that reassurance that there's nothing here. Like I want us to be able to go out in a group, and I need to be, if they're a friend, then let's just all be friends kind of a thing. But if they're going to great lengths to hide this relationship and be squirrely, then that's a whole different issue. That's not about you being jealous or controlling. That's about them being insensitive and having squirrely behavior. Yeah, Todd says, hiding messages, secret messenger stuff, no go." Yeah. Yep. Okay, let's see. Bougie Bear says, "I'm currently in a relationship with a narcissist. Leaving is not an option at this time, but is my future plan. Any advice at keeping my sanity while I make arrangements to leave?" Yes, there's a couple of things that you can do. It can help to make a list, a bullet point list, so it's easy to skim through, of all of the reasons you want to leave and all of the reasons this relationship isn't healthy for you. So if you ever have those little kind of strings of nostalgia pull at you and you're remembering all of the good times, you can go back and remember, okay, this is why I need to leave. This is why this is not working for me. That helps. Another thing to help is to be able um, to journal about your ideal future. So, and you might, depending on your situation, you might want to put all of this in like a password protected, Word document or some sort of cloud storage like Dropbox where they don't have the password. So like you're not relying on them to just not read your journal, right? Um, that you can actually uh, keep this stuff private. So really getting clear, you could start collecting pictures on Pinterest or just on the internet or what have you, creating like a vision board of this compelling future that you want to move towards. So that can help keep you motivated. So then you have the two opposites in your right. So you have the letter of the pain of this is what I don't want, and then so that's pushing you, that's keeping you away, and then you're having the pull of what you do want. So it's two forces working in the same direction to help you move forward to like your highest and greatest good and your highest and greatest life. Getting a support system can absolutely help people that, um, there's support groups online. There's ideally people in real life, which I know can be a challenge. If you have friends and they don't understand, or people that are supportive in your life and they don't understand, it can be helpful to let them know what kind of support you're needing. So it can be helpful because a lot of times people, if they've never lived this or if they've lived it, but it was a long time ago and they're at the point now where they just don't, like they almost lack empathy. Like they're very kind of quote unquote tough love, that kind of stuff, which is there's a time and place for it, but it more often than not just shuts people down. Letting them know that what you're needing right now is just somebody to listen or, um, somebody to keep encouraging you or somebody to just hang out and go watch movies with or do something totally different and not talk about your relationship. So kind of just setting some boundaries for what you need and what you don't need. And then like after you leave, letting people know, because people, I don't know why people do this, but um, just making it known. If you have any just pot stirrers in your life, you don't want to know anything that your ex is doing. Don't share Facebook stuff. You don't want to know if he or she's getting remarried, having a baby. You don't want to know anything about any of it. So don't tell you these kinds of things. Setting these boundaries early on can help. And then getting clear too on what does bring you some sort of peace in your life. And little ways. Little ways are are huge, especially when you're just kind of moment to moment and you're just feeling so emotionally and physically just exhausted from situations like this. So getting clear on what that really means for you, for these little moments of enjoyment or little moments of peace. It could be, taking, um, I don't know, taking a bath instead of a shower. It could be carving out time to where you give yourself 15 or 20 minutes before bed every night that for you just to read, to just get lost in something that's completely different. So not more self-help books, not more, stuff about this, something completely different. taking time, allowing yourself to, um, I don't know, take time for a 5-minute walk or to paint your toenails or to, um, you know, do certain things. You could do little things like go treat yourself to some uh, delicious scented soap at the body shop and get like the little travel size. They're only like $3 or something, $5, I don't know. And just keep that with you. And then make it a point every time you uh, go to wash your hands that you're using this scented soap. It just like little treats like this during the day can really keep a person. It can keep you going and it can keep you looking forward to these little oceans of relief, I guess, oceans of sanity that you're creating in your life. Making time to call a friend, setting aside, you could make a day of, okay, every Sunday afternoon, I'm going to call a friend. And if they don't answer, I'm going to call somebody else. And we're just going to talk about everything that's good and right in our life. Or I'm going to sit down and, um, uh, find some sort of fun activity or find a craft on YouTube or Pinterest and try to do that on Sundays. Something like that. It can help. How what is talking about his girlfriend, he says, "Yeah, she does this Airbnb where she filters through the people that wanna rent the room, and she selects dudes, and she seems to look for only dudes, even when there have been several women who wanted to book the room." Yeah, you know what? We don't need to get down to what's going on. Is she really searching out, only wanting to rent to the best looking guys, or is she having sex with them? Like, is she flirting with them? We don't even need to know that. If there's something going on that you're not comfortable with, then that's it. I would be uncomfortable if I was dating a guy and um, he were to rent a room, an Airbnb room, and have strange women staying over there, especially if he was flirty when I was out in public with him and there was a reason for it. I mean, it just depends on the context, you know? So I don't think that that's crazy to have, and it doesn't matter. Even if I did think it's crazy, it's you're uncomfortable with it. And that's really all that matters. So, it's everybody's got their own line in the sand with kind of what they consider appropriate behavior and what they don't, and what's uncomfortable and what's not. And I just think that's perfectly, you know, I think that's fine, perfectly reasonable to have an issue with that. Yeah, and Zachary makes the great point of, we deserve to feel emotionally safe in our relationships. Yeah. And that's really, really what it is at the end of the day, is just emotionally safe. So if somebody, like I was mentioning before with like opposite sex friends or um, things like this, like I have opposite sex friends. They are truly friends. Never dated, nothing ever happened between us. I understand when I'm dating somebody that is potentially gonna cause waves. It's gonna be a little awkward or uncomfortable, and so I make it a point of, I want you to meet them, you'll understand, like, there's nothing there, um, and if you only want us to go out for, not that I see these guy friends all the time, I don't, but if if you ever want to go out and you want it to be as a group, I completely understand that. Completely understand that. So it's navigating, navigating these boundaries with your partner. And the whole goal is for people to feel, safe. It's there's something wrong there if a person's like, "Oh yeah, I'm willing to risk um ruining my relationship or causing tension and fights in my relationship, especially over total strangers with Airbnb kind of stuff." You know? But if it's friendship stuff, like the relationships you're in, that should be the top priority of with the communication and, the respecting that and finding middle ground kind of a stuff. Um, so much, yeah. But yeah, if somebody's willing to throw away a whole relationship based off of a stranger, then there's some bigger stuff going on there. What says, well, I can't say anything because she says I don't pay, basically, you don't pay her bills or pay her rent. Well, I mean, if it bothers you, it bothers you. This is the part where it's going to come down to uh, kind of knowing what your deal breakers are. So, um, if that's a deal breaker for you, then that's okay. The hard part is so many people, and I get it, I've been there too, where we get confused with, we think we're being assertive and we think we're setting a boundary, but we're continually letting this person know, hey, what you're doing is not okay with me. Hey, what you're doing is not okay with me. Hey, what you're doing is not okay with me. And this conversation doesn't go anywhere. It's just a broken record, right? So we say this 20, 30, 50 times, and they tell us, well, I'm not going to change. And we're basically saying, I really want something to change. I'm not comfortable here. And then you're at an impasse. So then what? So then the ball's back in your court with thinking about, okay, then where do you stand with this? And how, what, it's time to kind of reevaluate things. Okay, if this is what's going on here, then at what point are you going to cut bait? So it's a common mistake for a lot of people is staying in a relationship thinking, well, surely after the 100th time I bring this up and we fight about it, they'll eventually see things my way and they'll eventually change. And you can throw years into a relationship like that and it doesn't doesn't budge an inch. So really getting clear on how much time are you willing to put into this relationship? How much time and energy and yeah, time and energy are you willing to put into this? And if she doesn't change, then what? Like, you know? So yeah, Jane Doe says, then peace out. So, okay. Oh gosh, Mark, that's a big question. He says, Dana, do you think American citizens are in an abusive relationship with our current president? I think that that's such a big question. I think Donald Trump. Here's how where I stand on stuff like this, okay, or where I stand on this in particular. Um, Politically, I would say, in the middle. I voted Republican before and I voted Democrat before. I really truly try to vote for who I feel is going to be the best person to run the country. And overall, I tend to be more fiscally conservative um, than fiscally liberal with stuff because the government is a huge bloated dinosaur, and throwing more money into it is not ever the solution. Um, so with that, so just so you know where I'm coming from politically, uh, I think Trump is, uh, or in weird political times, he's very manipulative, and he has done a very good job of instilling fear and tapping into a lot. I mean, I could just go on and on about this. I think he's done a really great job of um, tapping into and saying a lot of the things. There's been a lot of frustrations, I think, on the right for a very long time, and he really gave voice to them. And when he saw that was, people were like, yeah, you know what, we're tired of a lot of this kind of stuff that's going on, this kind of PC culture and stuff. And there's a lot of, there's some legitimate concerns there, and then there's some just fear-based stuff there. um, that really helped him pick up steam. And it's concerning to me, um, I just yeah, I think he's dangerous. Um, Politically, and it concerns me that people don't seem to understand how manipulative and just what a pathological liar he is. Now, this isn't to say that I think Hillary would have been the solution. A lot of people get on me about this. I did a video a long time ago, before Donald Trump even announced he was running for president, before any of that even came out, talking about his level of narcissism, and it was concerning. And I got so much grief for that after he became the president. And I have to tell people, I'm like, go check the date stamp, because this was before he ever even announced anything. This was like a solid year before he even announced anything. So he's been on my radar for a very long time. But like I said, this isn't to say that I think Hillary would have been the solution. My hope with all of this is that it's bringing attention to a lot of issues that have needed to be addressed for a long time in this country, with the government, with just politics in general, with how, I don't know, with just what works and what doesn't work. And I just think there needs to be a better way. So yeah, I yeah, that's my thought about it. But yeah, I guess you could say yes. I would say that's an abusive relationship. The level of manipulation is really high, and the continual justification of unjustifiable things is beyond concerning. And this is how, um, you know, this is how people just get more and more power. So yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Catherine says both Trump and Hillary are narcissists. Yeah, there's a lot of, that's the thing, right? Like, there's a lot of really problematic people that tend to get into politics, and um I it's um I don't know. There's things I like about every political party. I think that there's, obviously, like, there's pros and cons about all of them. And I love a lot of, like, the libertarian ideals. How much of that could possibly ever become reality? I don't know. I like the concept of conservatives and individual rights, the importance of individual rights and the importance of um, uh, fiscal conservatism, I think is really important. I'm not a big fan of, you know, like more and more government spending. Um, I big fan of more of the liberal mindset and the fact that it's more about, I think the intention there is good, right? It's the kind of wanting people to get the resources that they need to live a good life. I'm 100% for that. I don't know. I just wish we could uh, just I wish we could have some people get together and really look at what's worked and what hasn't worked in other countries and within our own country as well, and then just kind of hammer out a new way of doing things. Because this country is great. It has so much potential, and there's a lot of things we do that are right, but there's a lot of ways that we could really improve, and it would be cool to see that happen. So, I don't know. That's my 2 cents. So, Jennifer asks, do you think Melania is codependent? I think Melania is a woman who uh, married for money. And I don't know if she also married for citizenship or if she was already a citizen. I think, you know, I think she just, I don't think she had any idea what she was getting into. And then she began realizing, I really don't think that either one of them married for love. I think Donald Trump just tends to like to marry beautiful women and impregnate them. That seems to be his pattern. So, uh, yeah, I think she's stuck. I mean, for me, whenever I see her, I just look at her face and she just looks so dead inside, and I know that look. And um, I mean, the reality is, can you imagine trying to divorce him? Just the level of smear campaign and the level of hateful, hurtful things. And, here they have this, their son, Barron, and what that would put him through. And I can imagine, my 2 cents on it is I feel like she feels trapped. And, um, yeah. So I don't think it's so much more codependent. It's more of, how do I get out of this kind of a situation? I don't think you know, uh, I don't think she needs him. I don't think she is under any delusions that, that I don't think she thinks, oh, he loves me or that he'll change. I don't think she thinks that at all. I think she knows exactly the kind of guy she's married to. Um, you know, so, okay. So, with that said, let's uh, go into our guided meditation for the night, and we'll call it good. So politics are always so heated, and yeah, I don't know if I should have even walked through that door. I don't know, but Bougie Bear, let's talk about that next time. That's a big question. She asks, so since I'm new here, how did you start this journey helping others on your channel? Let's talk about that next Wednesday. So we do this live stream every Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It goes for 3 hours unless I lose track of time. Then it goes longer. But yeah, be more than happy to talk more about that. So, okay, so with that said, uh, okay, so how about let's take some time and settle in and get comfortable. So, if you are sitting down or if you are laying down, this is your time just for you. Gosh. So, just settling in to your chair or your bed or your couch, wherever you are, and allowing your body to just relax. Let's take in a series of 7 breaths, deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. With each breath, allowing it to travel further down into the bases of your lungs, allowing each breath to go deeper and deeper. Allowing your chest to rise and fall easily and effortlessly with each breath. Noticing that with each inhale, that more of your chest is rising, and that with each exhale, more of your chest is relaxing. Feeling the heaviness of your body as you begin to relax. Settling into this moment, turning your attention inward, feeling your heartbeat, noticing the temperature of the air around you. If it's a little on the cool side or a little on the warm side, or if it's just right. Noticing the sensations of anything around you, the feel of the fabric underneath you, and whatever might be touching your skin at this moment. Noticing if it's soft or if it's kind of itchy, if it's fluffy and warm or kind of thin and cool. Bringing your attention back to your heart beating. Noticing if you can feel the pulsing sensation in your chest or maybe in your ears, down into your feet, as your body just easily and effortlessly just circulates this amazing life force throughout your body. And taking some time to appreciate all of the things that your body does without us even needing to think about it. that your body is doing so much for you, trying to keep you safe and keep you alive and keep you in optimal health. So many things it's doing every second of every minute of every day. It's transporting oxygen and it's regenerating cells and it's figuring out what's helpful and what's not helpful. And your immune system is going. There's just so much that's working towards your highest and greatest good. Just taking some time to acknowledge that. What a gift. What a gift it really is to be here. And even though that life can be painful, it's still good. There's still so much about life that is good. And that there is so much that is good and right about you. So much that is good and right about you. You're dedicated to personal growth. That's huge. That's like 1% of the population, if even that. So that's tremendous. You're supportive of other people. You're becoming more self-aware. You're curious. You're compassionate. You're a lifelong learner. That's incredibly valuable. You're dedicated to your healing. You see your value. Even though it might not feel like it, you do. The fact that you're here, the fact that you're interested in moving forward to healing. Only people who see their value are interested in those things. So that's huge. You're self-reflective. You're creative. You're more than just a survivor. You're an absolute warrior to have gone through everything that you've gone through. There is so much that is good and right with you. Let's bring your attention to the top of your forehead and take some time relaxing the muscles around your forehead and your eyebrows and your eyes, and letting them relax. Relaxing your cheeks and your jaw. Allowing your tongue to fall from the roof of your mouth as you allow your face to relax. Relax your neck and your shoulders, bringing your attention to feeling the weight of your head and your neck as you allow it to relax. Relaxing your chest, allowing it to open, and allowing those wonderful, healing, restorative breaths to travel deep down into the bases of your lungs. Relaxing your arms, your forearms, your wrists, and your hands. And allowing your arms and your hands to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable. And relaxing your stomach, unclenching your stomach. A lot of people store their stress and anxiety there, and just allowing all of that to untangle and unwind. And relaxing your hips and your lower back. Allowing your legs to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable for you. And relaxing your thighs and your knees and your calves. Relaxing your toes. So letting them uncurl. And now with each breath, visualize sending that breath all the way down deep past your lungs, past your stomach, past your hips, down to the very tips of your toes, allowing your whole body to rise and fall easily and effortlessly with each breath. Noticing any areas that you might be storing tension, and lovingly sending some deep restorative breath to that area. Allowing that healing oxygen that you're sending to that area to act as though it was just untangling any tension that might be there. Let's take a few moments to reconnect with everything that's good and right with the world, because there is a lot out there that is good and right. And it's so important that we don't lose sight of that. Thinking now about some things that you're grateful for. Maybe a warm summer day or a good rainstorm. Or possibly just the joy of baby animals. They're just so stinking cute. Joy of babies in general. The enjoyment of a good movie or a good conversation. The appreciation of the health that you do have. Are the things in your life that are going right. If you have food in your refrigerator, or a roof over your head, even some money in the bank. These things, it's so easy to take for granted. And we're Very fortunate. We're all very fortunate to have what we have, whatever it is that we have that's good and right in our life. We're fortunate to be in these bodies that just work around the clock to restore and repair, that keep us in working order. That's just so amazing. Be grateful for the internet. It's just such a gift and access to the world and to each other and to anything that you can even imagine. How cool is that, that we live in a time where we have that? There's so much that is good and right with you and your life. There really is. And allowing that feeling of contentment and peace, feeling that inside of you. Maybe perhaps visualize it like a glowing ball of light and realizing that you can always come back to this place anytime you choose, of reconnecting to yourself, validating yourself, and reconnecting to everything that's good and right. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes and come on back. So, thank you guys so much for joining me and for joining us and for supporting each other and for all of your wonderful questions. And it was we covered a lot of ground tonight. That was a lot of great questions all across the board. So thank you so much. Take care, you guys. I will see you next week. And as always, you are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care. Okay. Good night.